Hello, I'm reading Robin Hood, and this is Chapter 4, The Curtal Friar. One fine day when the forest was at its greenest and loveliest, and the sun was casting a pattern of light and shade on the smooth greensward, Hood's men were in so joyous a mood that they resolved to make holiday. They ran races and jumped like so many merry schoolboys. They played with the quarterstaff, they wrestled, they danced, they practiced every sport of the forest. At last they came to the sport which was nearest and dearest to their hearts, the use of the good longbow. They might try their hands at this or that, but in the end they were certain to betake themselves with new delight to their beloved archery. Several parties went into the forest in search of deer, and one party was formed of Robin Hood, Little John, Much the miller's son, and Will Scarlet. Soon they saw a herd pasturing at a good distance, and Robin Hood said, "Which of you can kill a buck or doe 500 feet away?" Instantly Will Scarlet killed a buck, and Much killed a doe. But Little John drew his great bow and loosed a mighty shaft and sent it humming through the heart of a big stag more than 500 feet away. "Good shot!" cried Robin Hood. "God's blessing on thy heart, Little John. I would go 100 miles to find the man who could match you with the bow." Will Scarlet began to laugh upon hearing this flattering speech. "You need not go 100 miles, Robin," he cried. "You can meet his match nearer than that." "I know not where to go," replied Robin Hood. "Why, to Fountain's Abbey," cried Will Scarlet. "There you may find a Curtal Friar, short-frocked friar, who can draw a strong bow with any man. He will beat Little John, or you either." Robin Hood pricked up his ears when he heard this. His master passion to draw a stout fellow to him awoke at once, and he vowed that he would seek out this famous friar without delay. So he made himself ready for the journey, and away he went. Robin was well armed, for the country into which he meant to venture was a dangerous one for him if he should become known. He wore a coat and cap of steel, a good sword at his side, a buckler on his arm, a sheaf of arrows slung at his belt, and his trusty longbow at his shoulder. At last he rode into the beautiful dale where Fountain's Abbey stood, and where its ruins stand to this day, and saw the river calmly gliding, a band of silver, through the sweet valley. He drew rein to glance over the scene, and, as he looked, he saw a figure walking at the waterside. It was a strange figure, for though it was wrapped in the robe of a Curtal Friar with a cord round the waist, a steel cap was on the friar's head, and a sword and buckler were at his side. "By my faith," thought Robin, "this should be my man. If he be a friar, he has the air of a fighting friar, and he must be the man I seek. Now will I make trial of him." So Robin sprang down from the saddle, tied his horse to a thorn, and went to meet the Curtal Friar. Robin followed a path which ran down straight to the river, and then appeared on the other side. "There's a ford there," thought Robin Hood, "and I am in mind to cross it dry-shod, and the friar shall take me over. Now where is he?" For the burly form of the Curtal Friar had disappeared among the bushes that fringed the stream. Presently Robin saw him coming back. The friar was pacing to and fro on the river-bank, reading from his missal, as he came to begin to chant a psalm, and his voice was like the bellowing of a bull. Suddenly the friar's voice stopped in mid-verse. He had gained the point where the road ran into the river, and there stood a stranger whose bow was bent, and whose shaft was pointed full upon him. Such a sight as this would have dismayed many, but the Curtal Friar took it very calmly. His round, red, plump face lost not a shade of color. His little pig-like eyes, almost hidden in the fat of his cheeks, were filled more with amusement than alarm, and he thrust his steel cap back and scratched his bald, shiny noddle with one forefinger. "Ay, faith," he said, "ye may put down that bow and arrow, my son. If your purpose be robbery, 'tis useless. Not the smallest coin have I about me, and 'twere trying to dine off a dry bone to rob a Curtal Friar, a man vowed to poverty. And if your purpose be not robbery, I know not why you should point a shaft at me, since never before have I set eyes on your face." "Nay, friar," said Robin, "I seek neither thy life nor thy money. I do but wish to have thy aid in crossing this ford, for I see that the water runs deep after the rain. Therefore take me on thy back and carry me over." The friar said nothing, only pulled a wry face in so comic a fashion that Robin Hood had much ado not to burst into a fit of laughter. But the holy man carefully laid his missal down and prepared to take the outlaw on his broad, burly back. Robin Hood leaped merrily to his perch, and silently to the friar. The friar strode into the water, and soon they reached the other side. When they were over the stream, Robin Hood sprang nimbly from the friar's back and turned to thank him, but as he was doing so he felt himself seized in a grip of iron and saw a dagger at his throat. "What means this, friar?" he cried. "What would you shed my blood? Know you not that a churchman is forbidden to shed blood?" "The blame will rest on thee, my son, if blood be shed," replied the friar with a grim chuckle. "Obey but my simple commands, and your skin is safe. Refuse, and I will slit your windpipe 3 fingers deep." "And what thou'st ask?" cried Robin. "I have left my missal on the further side," said the Curtal Friar. "Lend thy aid, I pray thee, to convey me over this rude stream, that I may recover it." This was a bitter pill for Robin to swallow, to be obliged to carry the friar back, but there was no dodging out of it. The knife was at his throat, and the Curtal Friar had the strength of a bull as well as the voice of one. So Robin was compelled to bend his back and take up the enormous weight of the stout friar, who was almost as thick as he was long. It was a long time before Robin Hood forgot that trip across the ford with the Curtal Friar on his back. It seemed as if no mortal man could be such a frightful load as the friar proved. Robin was bent 2 double under it, and every bone in his body seemed to crack under the weight of the friar's burly form. Then Robin knew not the ford as the other did, and he floundered into the holes and slid about on slippery stones, and time and again was within 1 ace of going down headlong into the stream. But the friar tugged his hair, jerking him up when he appeared about to fall, and pounding him with both heels like one urging a reluctant steed across. At length Robin panted and gasping came to the further bank, and the friar leapt lightly down, for unwielding as this churchman looked, he was as nimble as any. But as the Curtal Friar bound to earth, Robin Hood caught him by the ankle and tripped him up, and the friar came to earth with such a bang that all the breath was driven out of him in an odd sound which was something between a squeal and a grunt. Then Robin Hood whipped out his sword and bestrode his fallen opponent, whose helmet had flown 3 yards away. Here's a picture. "Now, friar," he cried, "I think the game has turned my way again. I am still in mind to reach the farther shore. Promise me that you will once more carry me over, or I will cleave your bald noddle in twain." "I promise," gasped the Curtal Friar as soon as he could draw a breath, for he liked not the look of the heavy shining blade flashing above his bald crown. So once again the friar took Robin upon his broad back and strode into the stream. But in the middle of the stream the friar paused for a moment. Robin thought of the holy man had halted to gain fresh foothold, and he laughed to think the friar to think the friar and not he was floundering over the slippery stones this time. But his laugh was cut short. The Curtal Friar suddenly gave a tremendous jerk of his huge shoulders and shot Robin head first into the river. "Now," roared the Curtal Friar, "choose ye, my fine fellow, whether you will sink or swim." Saying this, he turned and bustled back to his own side of the stream. Robin was washed to the other side by the strong current, and he caught hold of a bush of broom whose long branches swept the water. Now he dragged himself to the bank and scrambled ashore. He turned at once to see where his cunning opponent was. There stood the burly friar, laughing all over his fat red face to see Robin Hood climb to land with the water pouring from every stitch of his clothes. "I'll soon make thee laugh on the other side of thy mouth, Jack Priest," shouted Robin Hood, who was hopping mad after this great ducking. He caught up his bow and let an arrow fly with tremendous force, but it never reached its mark, short as the distance was, and so true the aim, for the friar raised his steel buckler and caught the arrow very deftly in the middle of it, and this he did time after time until Robin had emptied his quiver and never touched the fat friar once. Then the friar sang in his great roaring voice like a bullfrog in a pond, shoot on, thy fine fellow, shoot as thou hast begun. If thou shoot here a summer's day, thy shaft I will not shun." "Nay," shouted Robin when his last arrow was sped, "if I cannot reach ye with a grey goose shaft, friar, I will show ye a trick or two with the broadsword." And with that he drew his sword, swung his buckler up, and leapt into the river. Seeing that the outlaw meant to assail him at close quarters, the Curtal Friar ran for his steel cap and clapped it on his round bullet head, and took sword and buckler himself. As he turned to the fray, Robin sprang to the bank and was upon him at the next moment. Then began a fierce and obstinate battle. The great broadswords flashed and glittered as they were swung on high to deliver mighty strokes, and the steel bucklers ran again as the heavy blades were caught and turned aside. Up and down the bank the combatants swung to and fro as they struck at each other, Robin leaping nimbly from side to side to seek some unguarded point of his opponent's defense, and the doughty friar turning and meeting him face to face all the time. For a full hour swords struck and bucklers rang. They fought on the bank, in the water, waded ashore again, lunged, parried, smote, warded, lashed at each other with might and main, and at last they were fain to pause and lean on their swords, so weary were they with their stern battle. Beshrew me, friend," said Robin Hood, "thou art to the full as bold a companion as I expected to find. A boon, I beg of thee." "What boon dost thou ask?" asked the friar. "Naught but this," replied the outlaw. "Hold thy sword while I put this horn to my mouth and blow 3 blasts." "Blow as thou pleasest," replied the friar. "I care not for thy horn." Robin Hood smiled, for he knew what his horn would bring. Then he set it to his mouth and blew 3 mighty calls. The 3rd blast was still echoing among the woods when 50 yeomen, their bows ready and bent, came racing over the lea. "What men are these," cried the friar, "who come so hastily?" "They are my men, friar," replied Robin Hood, "and they hasten to their master's aid." "And who art thou?" asked the friar. "Men call me Robin Hood," quoth Robin, "and these bold archers are my companions in the greensward." "What is thy name, bold friar?" said Robin Hood. "Thou art a man after my own heart." "I am called Friar Tuck," said the Curtal Friar, "and these 7 years I have kept this vale and beaten every man who hath ventured into it against my will." "Come with us to merry Sherwood," cried Robin, "and we need a priest that we may not live like heathen in the greenwood. We are outlaws and dare not venture to church into the town. But if you would join us, thou couldst sing us a mass and read us a service, and every Sunday throughout the year a noble shall thy fee." "I will come," said Friar Tuck, My heart leans towards your jolly brotherhood, and I will be your priest and father confessor. I will bring my dogs, and we will range the greenwood with them, and hold many a fine stag at bay. That was how the famous Friar Tuck joined Robin's band in Sherwood, and came to have his share in many a song and story. The end of chapter 4. Next chapter is chapter 5, How Robin Hood Dealt with Sir Richard of the Lea. Thank you for listening and watching.